Welcome back to my channel Code Dictator. In this tutorial we are going to learn about JPA with MySQL configuration with Spring Boot. So if you not yet followed my channel, so subscribe my channel, like and share with your friends and hit the bell icon to get notifications. Let's start with the practical example. So if you want to create any Spring Boot application, so you guys can do like simply right click new and you can create your web application which is Spring Boot starter project. Next, here automatically it will download your application from your starter.spring.io that we'll already learn in the previous session. Here we are going to give that application name, so we will give the name as Spring Boot with MySQL, and here I am keeping all the information as default. I don't want to change anything right now. I'll just change the group name and package name over here, Code Dictator, and the package name will be like com.codedictator, and simply click next. So right now we are going to add dependency which is web starter Spring Web. So this Spring Web is containing all your dependencies and like embedded server as well. With that we need one more dependency which is MySQL driver, and to connect with MySQL driver we need JPA as well. So Spring Data JPA we are using right now. So we require these three dependencies. So one is Spring Data JPA, MySQL driver and Spring Web. So simply hit on the finish. Automatically it will create your application with the help of Spring Starter IO, and it will download that project and it will download all the dependencies from your central repository to your local drive. So if you see here, it is automatically downloading all the files or required jar files for your application. Here it is. So basically if you see here, we have basic structure. So after downloading all the files or dependencies, the structure will be changed. So it will take little bit time. It's depend on your internet connection. So this is downloading n number of jar files. If you see here, it is downloading like Tomcat, and again it is downloading your Hibernate files or JPA files and database connectivity drivers and all their classes with that jar files. Yes, so it will take little bit time, depends on your internet connection completely. So I'll pause my video here. Okay, so now it's downloaded everything. Like now it is downloading all the Java doc file, so that is not required right now. It will download automatically. If you open your package now, your project, so you will get the package structure is changed right now. So we have Java resource and Java test and pom.xml. So here I will recommend you, if you are not clear with the basic concept how package structure works, so please go and check my first Spring Boot video. That link will be provided into the description part. Okay, so if you open the pom.xml, so when you are opening your pom.xml first time, so you will get this type of overview. So how we can do that? Here instead of overview, if you see the tab here, we have this pom.xml. So you can simply click on it. It will open that XML file for you. So here all setup is there. Again your group ID, artifact ID, version and all that information is already stored. So I'm working on Java 1.8, so 1.8 version is there, and it is automatically added your dependency which is Spring Data JPA. The another one is Spring Starter Web and MySQL connector. That version will choose at a runtime. So about theory part, in the next video I'm going to cover all the theory part of JPA as well, but in this part we are mostly focusing on the practical implementation. So right now the most important part is, first of all we need to connect with provide some connection link with my database. So here we can do one thing. In the application property file we can write our own custom properties. So here if I want to connect with my MySQL database, so first of all I need to choose MySQL database driver, that is data source. So spring dot data source, and here if you click data source, and automatically it will recommend you that first one is your driver class name. So if it is MySQL, right now I'm working with MySQL, so I'll provide the MySQL driver name, which is com dot mysql dot jdbc dot driver. So this is the mandatory, you need to follow the same structure. If you are using the older version, you can go with the Java MySQL JDBC driver, and if you are using any higher version, you can go with the com.mysql cj jdbc driver if you are going with the higher version. So right now I'll go with the basic one, and then we need to add one more property over here, that is basically my database connection URL, that helped me to decide like what is my database name. So first of all, here I need to create one database. So if you guys not aware like how to deal with the help of terminal, how to connect with database, and how to create database, how to interact with database, and the basic query with the help of command line CLI, so I already uploaded those documentation on my GitHub, so that link you will get in description part, and as well as you will get into the tabs. So here I'm taking you just basic overview. So MySQL -u root -p, and basically MySQL and the user, which is root, and then I need to set the password. That password is default one. I just now kept it everything as default, so that is root. So if I want to see how many databases are present in my system, so that I can use show databases. If you hit, so it will show me all the databases which are present in my current database. So if I want to create a database, so I can use create database, and the database name tickets. So database is created. If you want to use those database, so first of all you need to select it, so you can use and database name, database use tickets. So database has changed right now. So in that database you are going to create all the tables, but here the important point is we are not going to create any table manually. My JPA or my ORM is going to create that table, all the tables for me. Okay, so how it works, that I am going to explain everything in my next video or next tutorial. In this tutorial, again the scope is we are performing it practically. Okay, so my database created right now. So here we can set the database URL. So spring dot data source dot, you can set your URL. So basically URL is like your JDBC if you are connecting with the MySQL. So JDBC colon, it is MySQL, we are specifically going with the MySQL, so MySQL colon /, and if it is so right now we are connecting with the local system, we are creating the application for local system, so we can give it as a local system localhost colon, and the default port of MySQL is 3306. On that port it is going to work / your database name that just now we created over here, that is tickets. So I'll give it that name here, tickets. So this connection URL is set up right now. So right now my application knows this is the driver of my JDBC, and this is the URL where my database is present, which database I want to connect, and on what port it is going to connect. But right now I need to set some configurations, like if you remember, to create the database, first of all I need to log into my application, which is -u, that is root, and the password of my MySQL, that I need to provide it to interact with my database. So the same thing we can provide it. So spring dot data source, and you can set not the data username, it is just a username, and you can set your database name whatever it is. So if your database name is like ABC, so you can give that username, basically not the database name. So my username is root, and the same way you can set the password. So that spring.datasource.password, and the password is same root for my local system. Yes, definitely in the production we are not setting all the property into the property files. We are going to set all the properties into the environment file, or we are going to set all this property into somewhere else, but we are not configure this high secured information as a parameter itself. And in future we are going to learn those stuff as well, but bear with me. So right now the database connectivity is done. This I can say like MySQL database connection, but right now my application knows about the database, but my application don't know about any ORM, that is Hibernate we are going to use. So my application don't know about any ORM or any JPA concepts. So right now we need to inform them, okay, this is the ORM I'm going to use. So we'll set ORM right now. So simply if I want to set JPA configuration, so we can use spring.jpa.hibernate and the DDL auto. We are going to set this property DDL auto. So what is the DDL auto actually? So DDL is data definition language. That is basically your all the operation which you can perform, like which is delete, insert, update. So CURD operation basically we are going to perform. So if you see, we have multiple options like create and drop, none, update and validate. So basically create is what, whenever we are running our application, so every time it will create that all the tables newly. Every time it will create that tables, it will drop, it will try to create the tables every time. But when it is create and drop, so when you are running your application, so it will create your all the table structure schema basically. And if you stop your application, so before calling your destroy method of lifecycle, it will delete all the table, it will drop all the tables, and then it will stop your application if you are choosing create and drop. So every time whenever you are running your application, so it will delete your table and it will create it again. But if you are choosing update, so basically update, how it works, so whenever you are choosing update, so it will look into your database first. So table, if the table already present, so it will never create the table again, it will only update all the information, basically it will append it. But if the database is not present, so it will create, or else it will update all the information in the same tables. So mostly we are going to choose update itself, we are not going to choose any other. And then we required dialect to set the Hibernate properties. So spring dot jpa dot, and we can set property properties dot, so properties dot Hibernate dot elect equal to, so that is basically it is helping us to connect with the database. So we are going to discuss more about all the properties in the next coming tutorial. So here we can set like org dot hibernate dot dialect dot mysql. So guys, keep the syntax, okay, you must follow the same syntax when you are writing it. So I am using version 5 dialect, and right now whatever the query I am going to execute, so those query I want to write on my console. So if I want to see all the queries, what exactly going behind the scene, how the JPA is creating all the things for you, so that they for their that purpose we have a special property which is spring.jpa dot, and it is simply show SQL. So basically you can make it as a true. If it is true, so it will print all the whatever the task is going behind the scene, that will print on your console. So if you are trying to create any table, so it will write the query like create table, table name, and all their constraint and columns and their parameters. If you are writing any update query or delete or insert query, so everything will write on your console, the what exactly the behind the scene JPA works. and right now I don't want to conflict with my port, so I want to change my port only. So server.port, which is I am going to use 9090 right now. Okay, so save this file. So now we're done with the configuration, and the same configuration you will get into the description part, so don't take it, don't worry about it. Only just you need to change your username, password and your database name. That's it. And if you want to change your port, you can do it. Most welcome. So right now we are going to perform the second step. So this is the Java class. So we already knows the main method is always present at your root level. So behind that, so after that we are going to create first our entity class, and then we are going to create our controller, repository and service layer. That we are going to follow MVC architecture right now. So first of all, I'll create entity class, that is my basically Pojo class. So class, I'm going to create new class which is ticket. This is basically my my class name, and the class name I can make it as a table name as well, or I can change those property as well. So that is present inside my model package, and this is the class name ticket. Hit finish. And if I want to make this class as an entity class, or less kind of like a database connectivity class, so we need to annotate with the entity. And that is present inside your Java X persistent entity. So now this class is identified as an entity class. But again, if you want to change the table name, because by default it will take my class name as a table name, so if you want to change my table name, I can use a notation which is table, and in double quote, if you want to pass any specific table name, you can pass it, that is name equal to anything, any name you can pass. So ticket counter, just this is what my table name. Press Ctrl Shift O to resolve all the annotations or all the classes. So average, choose your Java X persistent table, don't go with the Hibernate right now. So we choose that table annotation. Right now I have attributes like ticket ID, so that is, so basically I'll make all the attributes as private, which is like type of long, which is ticket ID, and again I have like private double amount, and the next property is private string category. Okay, so now we done with the all the attributes what I want, but to interact with this file I need getter and setters. So why that is required, I'll explain it very soon, but for now we'll create a getter setters. So you can use shortcut Alt Shift S, and then you can choose generate getter and setters. It will create all the getter setters for you. You can choose amount, category and ticket, and simply here also you can choose like what method you want to get method, set method, you can choose specific one, and you can simply click on generate. That is the public method by default. You can choose anything, protect, package, private, anything. So simply hit generate. It will generate all the getter and setters for you. And if I want to format my code, so you can use shortcut in Eclipse like Ctrl Shift F. Right now I'm working with the STS, so that shortcut will apply, but if you are going with the IntelliJ, so you can embed these shortcuts in there as well if you want. So right now I created my class, that is entity class, but always keep one thing in your mind. So whenever we are creating our entity class, so it required one primary key. So my ticket ID, I'm going to make it as a primary key. So we already knows about the database, how we can write a primary constraint over there, but how we can set primary key constraint with the help of my Java class. So for that we can use a notation which is ID. So basically ID tells that it is present in Java X persistent. So that is like whatever the variable or attribute is there present after me, that I want to make it as a primary key. And again, with the primary key we need something like called auto increment, because we are not providing those value manually. So we can simply use a notation like generated value. So it will help me to create value, it will generate automatically. And again, if I want to make the specific, if I do want to set this is this ticket ID as a column name, so I have another annotation called column, and you can set any name. So we have n number of parameters, so that is name is there, and you can choose any specific name. So ticket underscore ID, this will become a class column name. So the similar way I am going to choose set all the names column, and in that name equal to amount, or I'll call it as a cost. I don't want to call it as a amount. So for my Java class we are going to call it as a amount, but for my table we are going to call that column as a cost. Okay, so I hope you are getting this concept right now. Column, and you can choose category, so we are going it as a type, what type of that ticket. And again we have n number of different property, name equal to, okay, so we have n number of properties. So we can set column definition, we can set insertable or length, nullable. Nullable is basically a constraint that will not allow a null value, that is an optional parameter. Again scale, unique, so unique is also a constraint that it will allow only unique value, that you can make it as a boolean true or false. So same property we can apply this much constraint without creating manual table. We can set this constraint at a class level itself. So right now I'm not going to make any constraint over there. And if you see here ID, so by default it is a primary key, and that is having like it is setting all the property, like it not allow the null value, and it is the unique value it generates. So that is the use of ID. Okay, so right now we're done with the entity class right now, which is ticket. So right now we are going to write our controller. So to create a controller, just let me refresh the project, it will come in the proper structure. Right now it's done. Okay, I want to create a controller. So to create a controller, simply right click, new class, and we are calling it as a ticket controller. And here I'm going to change the package structure. So if you see, my main method is present inside my com code dictator, and after that we are going to create controller, which is controller a package name. Simply refresh your application if you are getting any package structure is not in the proper format. So if you guys are completely new in the Springboot, so my recommendation, go and check with my first tutorial, first, second and third tutorial. There I created a basic application with all annotations, and I explain all annotations in detail. So right now we are using RestController here, and again we are going to use request mapping. So in the request mapping we are going to set a base URL, that is like ticket. Okay, so here we are going to write our first method, which is simply a get method that will return a list of tickets. So how many tickets are present inside my table, that we are going to get. So to get all the things we can use directly get mapping. Okay, and here you can set your endpoint. So just I am giving it for more understanding, I am giving it as a get ticket tickets. Okay, so in the later part we are following some naming convention, but for understanding purpose we are setting this all the name. In future we are going to follow some standard way. So we need a method public, and this method is going to return me a list of tickets. It is not returning me a single object, it is returning me a list of object. So that's why I'll use list interface, and that will use ticket. That is basically my Pojo class or entity class, and my method name get tickets. Okay, so list I added this package, ticket package I added, and if you see this is the return type, so definitely I need to return something. So for now I'll return it null, because we are going to write some logic over here. I'll just mark here to keep me on track. Return list of ticket object. Okay, so right now I don't have any DAO. So basically DAO is like data access object. There we are going to access our all object, and that is going to interact with my database. So if I want to create, I'll simply create, right click on my base package. We are going to make it as an interface. Right now new interface, and we are going to give it the name as repository, and we are going to give the name, so ticket DAO. Hit enter. So by default, like whenever we want to interact with my database, so we required to extend one interface, that is CRUD repository interface, that is going to interact with my database and it is performing all the CRUD operations. So this is basically one interface, and CRUD repository is itself another interface. So one interface can extend another interface, and one class can extend another class, but one class can implement another interface. So that if you don't know about the object oriented concept, so please go and check my object oriented tutorial or playlist, that you will get link in description. Extends JPA repository. So we are not following the CRUD, we are going to use JPA repository. And JPA repository actually basically it's required two parameters. So one is your entity class, and the another one primary key, the type of primary key of your entity class. So my entity class name is ticket, and if you see the ticket class, primary key is your type of long. So we are going to create our DAO type as a long. Right now we're done with a JPA repository here. Okay, so let's go back to our controller, and there we can use this DAO class. We can auto wire them, we can inject this property, and we can call all the methods, whatever methods we required we can call over there. Okay, so create the object which is private. Always make the habit, make this object as a private. So private ticket DAO, and you can call it as like simply DAO or anything, any specific proper naming convention you can follow, but I need to auto wire it, I need to inject those properties. So here we are going to achieve dependency injection. So auto wired is annotation which will help you to inject those property here, auto wired. So now the property is injected inside the DAO. So instead of this statement, instead of returning null, we are going to call DAO dot find all. So basically find all method will return you a list of ticket, list of an object. So that method we are going to call, and it will return that value as a list of ticket itself. So right now in our table we don't have any tickets, but still we are going to run our application. So let's run the application. If you want to run it, you can simply right click, run as we have embedded server which is Apache Tomcat. So simply run as Springboot Application. Okay, so now my application is up, like it is initialized port with Tomcat 9090, and okay, for now you can just exclude this error, because right now I am using the higher version of MySQL. So that's why I need to go with the com MySQL CJ JDBC driver, and right now I'm using a basic one. So for now you can exclude this warning, but we are going to add the same driver inside our property file. Simply we are going to copy it and we are going to paste it. So I just told you there we have different drivers, so we are going to use CJ. But the point we are going to note down here, that driver class is loaded, that is registered. If you see this message, so that is my MySQL JDBC driver, and it started your application, it loaded your delegate as well, and here it helps us to create a table which is Hibernate sequence table. So the sequence table is basically, it is a increment table. So if you remember, we used in the entity class, we use this as a generated type. So generated type is helping us for the auto increment part. So it helps us to auto increment our ID. Okay, automatically it will increment those IDs. So it is having only one column which is next value, and the type of is big int. So automatically it will create a next value in the sequence table, and the default is started with the 1. So I don't want to start with any specific custom sorry, I don't want to generate any custom sequence. So it's by default it will start from 1, and here this is my entity class. So when I am executing this class, automatically it will create a table. So first of all, if you remember, we have application file, and in application file we are using as DDL auto, that is update. So first of all it will look into that, okay, if my table is present or not. If it is not present, so it will create, or if it is already present, so it will update those value itself. It will not going to create it again. And as I told you, the ticket ID is created, but if you remember that, let me minimize, maximize it. So the ticket ID column name is ticket underscore ID. So here it is ticket underscore ID, that is my column name, ticket underscore ID, and here I used as a ID. The type I am using as a primary key. So by default primary key constraint will be applied over there. So the begin, because I am using as a long data type, so long data type is in database format, it is begin. So automatically it will consider as a not null. And if you come at the last of this creation, primary key which is ID. So by default, with the help of this annotation and @ID, it will make my ticket ID variable as a primary key, and then I have another parameters which are like amount and category. But if you see the amount, with this variable name is available in only Java, but for my database, that amount column is basically a cost, and the data type is double, and it is precision, so it will follow a exactly same decimal value. And when I am calling it as a category, for my database it is type. If you see, it is a type, and that is I am using as a string. For my database, data type is varchar, and this is the maximum size of varchar. You can expand it, no problem. You can add the more size over here. So what I am going to do, I am going to copy this CJ part as it is, and I am going to add this part in our application property. I told you here we are using driver, so here I added that driver part, and I am going to stop my application, and I am going to run my application again. But we knows, correct, the DDL auto is update. So now this time what will happen, it will not create a table again, okay, because my table is already present in my database. So if you see right now, I didn't perform any manual task with my MySQL, but without creating MySQL, if I use show tables, if I hit enter, so by default the sequence table is created, and ticket counter table is also created. That is created with the help of my JPA and ORM, Hibernate ORM. So if I use DESC, that is for describe my table, ticket underscore counter. So this is the description of my table. Okay, so the ticket ID, cost, and type, these are my columns, and these are all their data types, and the other constant what we applied right now on my table. So if I am running this application again, let me run this application again. So this time I didn't got that error. If you notice here, I don't have that error right now, because right now we are using the higher version of my driver, which is CJ1. And if you remember, like, we are using this update, so because of this update it is not going to create any table again, because that table is already present in my database. So for now what I'm going to do, I'm going to change my table. Only one parameter I'm going to add, so that is again column, and the name is I'm going to create it, just an example, like anything like created by, or I'll call it as the owner. And here I'm going to set a default value. So column definition, and you can set them as like admin. Okay, and private string, and here I'm going to create variable called created by. Okay, so here we created that one, created by. And again the same thing, we need getter setters. So simply, if you want to create getter setters by another way, simply you can click on source. Here you will get option as getter and setters. You can choose the option and you can generate it. So now getter setter created. Again I'm going to run my application. Simply if you hit the run button here, so this time what will happen, let's see, because we have update, we are not using create. Let's run the application. So if you see here, right now it not created a new table for me, it's altered the table, same table, because that table is already present in my database. So it will alter that specific table, alter table ticket column, ticket counter, and it will add a new column which is owner and their data type, which is varchar. So because of this update, it is creating a new, it is not creating a new table, it is updating into the same table. So right now what I am going to do, I am going to delete this table right now. So I am going to use create and drop. So again let's run your application again. Let's see what will happen. Perfect. So if we created as create and drop, if you are choosing the DDL auto, this is the important property. If you are making it as create and drop, so what will happen, if table is already exist, so then drop it. Again if table is exist, then drop it, and then create a new table, and then perform your operation. Whatever operation you want, you can perform it. You can create your table that time. Now I am going to stop my application. So before stopping my application, when the destroy method of my service is called, so that time it will drop the table. If the table is exist, then it will drop all the tables from my database, because we are using create and drop. So when I run my application, it will create the table. If I am stopping my application, it will drop all the table. It don't care about the values. If I run the same application, it will create all the tables again. Here it is, it created all the tables again. And if I am stopping my application, it will destroy, it will drop all the tables. Right now we are going to create only create. Now run the application again. So every time whenever we are going to run our application, it will create a table. Okay, but when I am going to stop my application, so it will not destroy the tables. But if I am running my application again it will drop all the table and it will create it new table. So whenever you are choosing the property, choose it properly. So mostly we always go with the update, but depends on the application. So whatever the requirement on the application, you can choose a specific one. Okay, so here we learn a lot many things about how it creates the table and how it interacts the table. So let's play with some API. I'm going to just make it proper. Okay, so right now we're done with the basic setup of our application. Right now in my table I don't have anything, correct? So to test our application, let's run it again. that application is run right now. It's up. Okay, so now our application is up. So right now we are going to test our API that we already done here, which is get API, and which will return a list of tickets which are present in my table. So the base URL is ticket. So basically my application that URL will look like, my port number is 9090. So localhost colon 9090 slash base URL slash your endpoint. So let's run this one. Localhost colon 9090. I don't have any mapping with the 9090 itself. So mapping is related with your ticket. So slash ticket slash, and what is your endpoint? So endpoint is get tickets. So if I copy and if I run it here, hit enter. Right now my object is completely empty because I don't have any entry in my database or in my table. So that's why it is showing me empty. So what we are going to do it right now, we are going to write one post API, and with the help of that post API we are going to store data in my database. So for to insert our data in database, we are going to use a simple PostMan application. We are going to use PostMan, but before that we are going to write our get API, sorry, post API. But if you see here that command is executed, the query is executed. I'll just copy it and I'll paste it here to understand it properly. Select is the query which will get all the data. So what data I want? Ticket ID, as we are using alias over here. Ticket ID, again ticket cost, we want cost as well, and we want type as well, and we want owner as well. So this is basically how it will work. Select star from okay, this is what the query we are going to fire in table database. So the our basic query is what? Select star from our table name. So basically our table name is what? Ticket underscore. So this query is auto generated with the help of JPA. It will look like this when it's created. So right now we are going to write our post API. So for post API we are using post method, post mapping, and we are setting one path here, that is add data or add ticket. And then method public, and here we are going to add our data into the database, and while adding the data into the database we are going to return some value to my client. So that's why we are using string only. And very soon we are going to learn about the response as well, like how we can pass a proper formatted response, and what is the status code, how we can add the status code in our response as well, and how we can add any particular message or object into the response. But right now we are returning the simple string message. So book ticket, this is the method, and it returns return, I'll just make it as an empty string, okay, or my string as a simple message. And this method will accept one class. It requires something, correct, because this is a post method. So the purpose of post method is what? Persist an entity into the database, so add new information into the database. So that's why we are using the post method, and post method required some request body. So that's why we'll use a notation called request body. So we have n number of things like request header, request body, or request param, query param, path variable. So n number of things. So we are going to cover all those things very soon. And here we are taking input from the user, which is a simple user like list of ticket and tickets. So we are expecting user is going to provide a list of tickets. So ticket is basically object. That parameters are like ticket ID, amount, category, and created by. So here I just want to add one more point, that we can follow a DTO design pattern. What is a DTO design pattern? We are going to learn, but before that we are going to learn a basic introduction of this get and post API. So right now we are simply passing entity class here, and this is a really bad practice, so don't follow it. For understanding purpose we are following it right now. And then we are calling our DAO class here. So object of DAO dot, and simply we can call it as a save method of DAO, and always the save method required one entity. So we are going to pass that entity here directly, which is tickets. And once it's stored into my DAO, okay, so here we are going, my save method is always required a single object. So for now we are going to use as a single object itself. Okay, so now we are going to store that, and in this we are going to return a message, ticket booked, and we can simply pass a size, or if it is a dynamic website, so local date and time API dot now. So it will return the message like ticket booked at the time of this time. Okay, and if you want ID, so we can set the ID as well. So this information we can pass n number of information. Okay, so let's run the application again. Okay, so as I told you, if you forget to close your application port, so definitely it will give an error. So how to solve this one? If you clicked on this a small icon, blue color monitor icon, so beside that you will get drop down. So here you will get all the running applications. So if you see first and second, so first one is basically still running on, so you can just go here, you can stop it here. Now my application is shut down. Now you can just run your application again. Now it will up. Perfect. So now it started with 9090 port. Again we are going to run our application on website. So the same application we are going to hit. I don't have any data right now in my table, so we are going to use PostMan here. So we are going to use PostMan over here. So how to interact with the PostMan, I am going to create a separate video for that, so please go through that videos as well if you are not aware with the PostMan. So simply you can click on new, and here I am going to call a one request. So you can say any request name, my request. I no need to use any description. Okay, so right now here the method, what method we are going to call? So the method is what? Post. So that's why we will choose here as a post from this drop down, post. Again, what is the base URL? Which is ticket / add ticket. But the base URL, if you look into that application, which is localhost, and this is the base URL. So here we are going to provide and /ticket and add ticket. Okay, here I set all the information. So post is the method name, method type, and this is the endpoint, and here we are going to pass a body. So basically body is what? Your entity class. So entity class having this ID, amount, category, and created by. These all parameter we require in the same format, exact same format as a object, JSON object. So we'll just I'm just providing you the basic overview, but we have a different tool like called Swagger, that is the auto document creation thing. So we can use those, and in the upcoming videos we are going to work with Swagger only. So copy this, and in the Postman you will get here body, the type is raw, and you can choose as a JSON here. In that you are going to create as a JSON, which is basically a JSON object. Okay, and we can just simply add this parameter colon ticket ID is 1, comma, this is not required, amount which is boolean type 100 rupees, 0.00, again category. So category is like first row, and again created by, and here we are going it like user, you are providing it as a user. So this is a request body, and don't worry, I'm going to provide this request body as well into the description section. Simply you need to hit a send button. Once it is successfully added, so you will get a status code that is as a 200, that is successfully done. You will get entire information over here, how much time it takes. So it took almost 248 milliseconds only to hit my server and to get the response from my server. And here it is the date and time that I returned from my system date and time, and this information is stored into my database. If you want to cross check, you can just simply open your MySQL and you can use select star from ticket counter, spelling mistake, typo mistake. So the information is get stored in my database right now here. So but I'm not trusting with my database, I want to check with the help of URL. So if you want to run the get URL, you can run in the Postman as well. So you simply click on plus icon, here is a get method, and whatever the endpoint, you need to choose it the endpoint properly. So the endpoint is get tickets, you can set get tickets, and the method is get. Simply hit send, it will return you a response body, that is a get method. And if you want to run the same application in web browser as well, you can open your any favorite web browser and the same URL you can pass it here, refresh it, you got your object. So right now I'm going to add some more data in my database with the help of Postman. So ticket ID is 2, cost is 200, first row, second row, and that is created by user itself. Send, that information is stored in my database. Again you can hit here. If you see right now I got list of object. So right now in my database I have multiple object, and if you remember in our Java code we have return type as a list of object. So that's why we are getting list of object. And if you see here we are getting all the queries what are executing behind the scene. Those all the queries you will get on the console. And why we are getting it? Because of the property that DDL show SQL true. If you make it as a false, so you will not get this information on your console. Okay, this is how we can interact with our database with the help of get and post API. So in the next session we are going to create a full-fledged application, and we are going to learn a different type of annotation as well, like what other annotation we can use. But this is a basic intro of get and post API. Thank you.